There are a number of women in the life of Adolf Hitler other than Geli Rabaul and Eva Braun. One was Maria Reiter, better known by the name of Mimi. Here I'm going to look at her relationship with the Nazi dictator, but at the same time the evidence for most of this comes from Reiter herself and may well be exaggerated or not true. The main source for this video is an interview that she gave to the German magazine Der Spiegel in 1959, and I shall look at that in some detail during this presentation. Mimi Reiter was born on the 23rd December 1909 in Berchtesgaden. Therefore, she was more than 20 years younger than Hitler, but as we've seen in other cases, he liked young women with his taste, in my opinion, verging on that of paedophilia. Maria's father, Karl Reiter, was one of the people who had founded the branch of the Social Democratic Party in Berchtesgaden. He married her mother, Maria Reiter, née Wenger, in Berchtesgaden in 1908. According to her own account, there are two places where they may have met in 1926. Hitler was 37 years old and she was only 16. The first was a shop in Obersalzberg where she was then working, and the second was in the Kurpark in Berchtesgaden when she was walking her sister's dog and Hitler was probably walking his dog. In 1959, Stern reporter Guenther Peis interviewed Hitler's sister Paula. Paula said that there was only one woman Hitler ever loved. Peis probably initially thought that she was referring to Geli Rabaul or perhaps even Eva Braun, but no, she was referring to Mimi Reiter. As a result, he tracked down Maria Reiter, then 49 years old, and got her to talk. Mimi was not impressed by Hitler, and certainly not his moustache when they first met. I have to say honestly that the gentleman with the two black flies that clung to his upper lip under his nose did not attract me at all. However, she told her sister later, he looks dashing with his boots and his riding crop. He really is an imposing figure. But those weird flies? I kept giggling. When Hitler, again a little later, expressed his wish to kiss Maria, he called her Mimi. Mimi resisted. To which Hitler replied, "Why don't you want that? Don't you want the same thing as I do?" "I don't want it, Herr Hitler. I can't, please." "If you don't want to, if you really can't do this, then we must really never see each other again. We must never again meet like this again, because it will hurt both of us far too much." "If that's what you mean," I said to Hitler, "then it would probably be best if we don't see each other again." Hitler's forehead contracted, his mouth suddenly narrowed, his gaze lost the warmth that it was there earlier. The kindness drained from his face, and then suddenly he let go of me. He just said, "Heil." But Hitler came back and asked the young Maria if he could accompany her to the grave of her recently deceased mother, who had died in 1926. I looked at the wreaths again, then I started to cry because I noticed that Herr Hitler was being moved by something he didn't want to tell me. I cried more and more, then he turned to me, took my hands, folded them, held them to his chest and hugged my head. The words that Hitler spoke to me sounded serious, like an alliance in dire straits. "I'm not ready yet." She didn't understand what he meant. Then Hitler said, "But listen, my dear, I would like to ask you that from today we call each other Du. And I would like you to call me Wolf." Du is, of course, the familiar form of address in the German language. Maria Reiter said, "We didn't kiss. There was no formal handshake, nothing. The kissing, however, was only postponed until the afternoon of the same day when it happened during a walk." Hitler led me to the front of a tall fir tree. He put me in front of it. I turned to the left, to the right. "What am I supposed to do here under this big fir tree?" I asked, amazed. "Nothing. You just stand there, just as you are now. A beautiful picture," he managed to utter. "Do you know what you are now? Now you are my forest fairy," he beamed. "What are you talking about?" I said. "What makes you suddenly think that I am a forest fairy? We're not at the theatre." "You'll understand that much better later, Mimi, my child," replied Hitler. "Besides, You shouldn't laugh at me either. Of course that made me giggle even more. Then he came upon me, grabbed me and kissed me. He kissed me wildly, stormily, untamed for the first time. He grabbed me and said, "Mimiline, dear, lovely girl, now I can't do anything else." He hugged my neck tightly. He kissed me. He didn't know what to do. He said, "Mimiline, I just love you too much. What I feel for you is everything, Mimi. Kiss me," he asked. I wanted to stop living. I was that happy. He just didn't know what to do. He said, "Mimiline, but I just love you too much. What I feel for you is just everything, Mimi. Kiss me," he asked. Hitler kept looking at me in shock. He paused and he kissed me again on the forehead, on the mouth, on the neck. I felt his fist clench. I saw him struggling with himself. "Child," he said, "I could crush you right now, right now." I stopped resisting. No more details of the encounter were published in Stern. Hitler did, however, get Mimi to embroider party emblems on two of his sofa cushions. Reiter was a member of the Berchtesgaden figure skating club. One day the club took a trip to Munich. Maria Reiter went along too. Whilst there, she went back with Hitler to his apartment. It got more intimate there. Wolf pressed his forehead against my neck. "You can't leave me any more, Mimi. Have you heard? Now, when I get my new apartment, you have to stay with me. Always. We will choose everything together. The pictures, the chairs. I can already see you everything in front of me. A beautiful, large, purple, plush diving suit." Diving suit? Sorry, that was a little joke of mine. I'll say it again. A beautiful, large, purple, plush divan suite. Nothing came of the plush furniture, or even a diving suit for that matter. Hitler gave up on Maria Reiter. She may have learned about Geli Rabaul. Distraught, she attempted to hang herself in 1927 or 28. For this she used a clothesline attached to a door handle. Luckily for her, she was found by her brother-in-law and saved. Word of this seems to have got out, as in September 1931, at the time of the suicide of Geli Rabaul, the periodical Die Fanfare, in an article entitled "Hitler's Lover Commits Suicide, Bachelors and Homosexuals as Leaders of the Party." This article spoke of another woman, whose suicide attempt in 1928 followed a purported intimacy with Hitler. Why did she do this, and why did Hitler ignore her and even on chance encounters pretend not to know her? Was it because of Geli Rabaul? An anonymous letter had been received by the Munich branch of the party. In it, Hitler was accused of lewd acts against a minor. Let's remember that Hitler had been released on parole from Landsberg prison. Not only would this damage his reputation, but also he could be sent back to prison, and after that, theoretically, he could be, as a foreigner, expelled from the country. At his trial, the right-wing judge had refused to expel Hitler once his term was up. However, now there could be additional charges for a new offence, and not a political one at that. 3 years later, in May 1930, she married a hotelier from Stenz in Austria, Ferdinand Woldrich. The marriage only lasted 3 years. When Hitler learned that she had left her husband, he asked Hess to intervene and suggested a new meeting. She agreed. Then it happened. He hugged me again and kissed me. It was well past midnight. He leaned back more and more on his sofa. Wolf grabbed me tighter and tighter. I felt everything happening to me then. I've never been happier than that night when we were alone in his apartment. By 2 o'clock in the morning, Hitler got to his feet again. After a while he said, "Mimiline, today I'm rich. I can offer you everything. Just stay with me, my lovely love. Dear Mimi," he begged me. "You must stay with me." Meanwhile, Mimi refused to become Hitler's permanent mistress, although they met again in 1934. Hitler complained that all women want to do is to have babies. However, there were no hard feelings, and Hitler asked party lawyer Hans Frank to help with Reiter's divorce. In 1936, she remarried, this time to SS Hauptsturmführer Georg Kubisch. Georg Kubisch was born on the 19th of November 1907 in Berlin. His father, Paul Kubisch, born in 1875, was an innkeeper. He was killed in 1915 in World War I, thus leaving his mother Anna a widow. After school, Georg Kubisch completed an apprenticeship as a locksmith in a repair shop. In 1927, Kubisch joined the Nazi Party. membership number 64961. He was one of the first members of the Berlin section of the party and thus knew Joseph Goebbels very well. At the same time, he became a member of the SA, the party's street fighting association. Around 1930, he switched from the SA to the SS, SS number 2619, thus becoming an early member of that organization too. Goebbels published a scurrilous newspaper called Der Angriff, the attack. Kubisch was hired as a truck driver for the paper and worked as a deputy to Goebbels' chief chauffeur at the time, Albert Tonach. He was the constant companion of the Berlin Gauleiter for the next 2.5 years, serving as chauffeur, bodyguard and adjutant. In the autumn of 1932, Kubisch assaulted the journalist Wilhelm Brun at his home. Brun had written a critical article about Goebbels and his wife. Goebbels noted this in his diary. Kubisch beat Brun with a riding crop in his own apartment. In his newspaper, Truth, he had insulted Magda in the most shameful way. Bravo! On the 31st of January 1933, Kubisch was used by Goebbels in one of the first major propaganda campaigns after the Nazis came to power. Kubisch spoke in the broadcast as one of the mass of Simple Party members who was overjoyed that the National Socialists had seized power. However, it would seem that there was a shortage of suitably excited people available for interview. No one from the Frontline Soldiers Association Stahlheim turned up, so Kubisch had to speak on behalf of the Stahlheim as well. Of course, he wasn't very old during the First World War. Kubisch, however, did not stay in Goebbels' good books for long. In February 1933, Kubisch was dismissed by Goebbels as chauffeur and adjutant. In his diary, Goebbels noted that Kubisch had been taking trips out in the now propaganda minister's car with ladies of dubious reputation. I'm sure you would agree that it's nice to see Goebbels maintaining sexual morality in the Third Reich. Kubisch was not long unemployed. In May 1933, he was employed by the Reich Air Ministry before joining the state secret police, the Gestapo, as a criminal clerk in August 1933. By the spring of 1934, at the latest, he held the position of head of the Gestapo's motor vehicle department. At the time, he also served as a detail leader for the guards at the Columbia House concentration camp in Berlin, the location of which you can see in this video. I should have said, of course, the former location of which, because it was torn down to make way for Tempelhof Airport at the end of the 1930s. Guards at Columbia House, largely recruited from the SA, were badly paid, and in general it would appear that by this time the initial fervour in guarding the former political opponents of the Nazi Party had gone. In May 1934, he took part in a police candidate course at the Eichner Police School near Potsdam. In the summer of 1934, Kubisch was transferred from Berlin to Munich within the SS. It was here that he met Maria Reiter. By the time of the wedding, Himmler was the boss of Kubisch. When Himmler learned that Hitler knew Reiter, he wanted to give the happy couple a house and furniture, but Hitler forbade him to do that. Hitler and Reiter met in Munich in 1938. She said that he complained about the bad relationship with Eva Braun. Kubisch was killed in action in northern France on the 8th of June 1940. When Hitler learned that Kubisch had been killed, he sent her 100 red roses. On the 8th of April 1945, Maria Reiter sent the following letter to Hitler. Dear Adolf, I'm sorry I cannot write a longer Sunday letter to you today. I am in a good mood and my confidence in you and my belief in Germany's victory is undaunted. I am sending you the heartiest greetings and remain with fond kisses until we can meet again. Your unwavering, always true, Maria. After the war, Maria Kubisch lived with Hitler's sister Paula Hitler for a while and worked as a maid in a hotel. The acquaintance between Hitler and Reiter is documented by letters from Hitler, but their content does not indicate one of the type that Reiter writes, and most of this evidence, as I've said, comes from the article in Der Spiegel from 1959. However, Paula Hitler casually mentioned to a German report in 1959 that she'd recently seen perhaps the only woman my brother ever loved. The woman turned out to be Maria Reiter, who was described at 49 as being blonde and buxom. Maria Reiter died on the 29th of July 1992 in Munich. Paula Wolf said after the war that she was the only woman who might have stopped Hitler's homicidal instincts. I hope you found that interesting. If you did, then you might want to subscribe. I upload every Friday at 2000 hours. That's 2000 hours my time. I'm now in Germany. Sometimes I'm in Poland and other places in Central Europe. If you're in the UK, it's going to be an hour earlier. And if you're somewhere else, it'll possibly be some other time. So, if you want to know when I'm uploading, then subscribe, please. And if you don't, then don't. All the best from me in Germany.